He's the most famous limo driver in the history of planet Earth. He drove O.J. Simpson from his home on Rockingham to LAX within the hour of a double homicide being committed on Monday. He is the only juror that had his testimony reread to the jury during deliberations. Brace yourself, ladies and gentlemen, for an epic episode. We have the one and only Allan Park with us on 1 Degree of Scandalous. I'm your host, Tom Zenner, along with the one and only Kato. And Allan, thanks for joining us. Let's get right into this. You know, Allan, going back to your days as a limo driver, it's not like you had that job for a long time back in 1994, right? I mean, you were a few months into this thing, right? It's kind of a new gig.
Yeah, correct. I mean, I only been working for the company for 3 months. I was doing a little work for another company, just very little, and brought a limousine home to wash it, work on it. I was doing something, and Dale St. John, the owner of the company, saw me working on it, and he's like, "Hey, you driving a limo now?" And I said, "Yeah, if you call it that." But he asked me if I want to do a little bit of work for him, and I said, absolutely.
So, Allan, did you have any celebrity clients? Did you drive celebs around?
You know, what's crazy is in that short 3 months that I've been working for him, I drove quite a few. There was always the select few that Dale would drive himself, OJ being one of them. So it was actually even rarer that I had the opportunity to drive him that night.
Yeah. Who were the others?
I think it was Faye Dunaway, Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Yeah, Casey Kasem, Gene Wilder. Just to name a few. There was, you know, I never drove that Kato guy, though.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Still a chance.
This is an epic day, really, because it's the first time you two, the two star witnesses in the O.J. Simpson saga, have ever really been together. I mean, period, end of discussion. So this is a very historic moment here.
30 years.
In 30 years.
And we've got Allan. This is amazing.
Yep. And I know Allan later in the episode is going to have a question that he's been burning to ask Kato for the last 30 years. Wow. We're going to get to that. We're going to talk about everything from the grand jury testimony to how Allan's life changed, what he's been doing since then, and it's just how this affected his life. So get comfortable, everybody. We're going to run through everything. And Allan, I guess where we go from here is that night, that Sunday night, you're a few months into this new job. How did you get dispatched for this particular run to the airport with OJ?
Well, Dale, the owner, knew a few days ahead that he was actually, I think he was doing some Little League baseball stuff for his son. He was picked as an all-star coach. So he had OJ for a pickup that Sunday, June 12th, which he knew that he wasn't going to be able to do. So he just asked if I was able to be available that day and could I pick him up. So I knew a few days ahead, and you know, I never got starstruck or was never anybody that asked for autographs or anything like that. But for some reason that night, I was actually kind of excited to drive the guy. You know, a big sports fan, big football fan. Knew him from, you know, obviously TV and movies and commercials, and you know, especially his football career.
Yeah.
And I'm a big USC fan. You know, obviously he won the Heisman Trophy there, so it was a big deal for me.
Yeah. So you get up there ready to go. You know who you're picking up. And that's when this incredible timeline, this 1 hour or so, where all these unbelievable things happened. You two, Kato and Allan, in the middle of both of them. I'll let you two talk a little bit about this. Allan, you show up on Rockingham with a pickup. You knew you had to take him to LAX for a red-eye flight.
Well, let me to say one thing, to not interrupt you here. I was literally, the Dale St. John, the owner of the company, got home early that night, and since I hadn't drove OJ before and hadn't been up to that Rockingham property, and you know, this is the time before GPS, and you know, we're still using Thomas guides and you know, map books and stuff. So I left a little bit early. We live pretty close to the 405 freeway, and I was just getting on the on-ramp to the freeway when the phone in the limo rings, and I answer it, and it's Dale, and he said, "Hey, where you at?" And I said, "I just got on the freeway." He said, "Hey, I got home early. If you're any closer, I was going to go ahead and do it." So literally within maybe a minute and a half, I still would have been home, and he would have drove him that night. It was that close.
Yeah. And can you imagine that's a fork in the road in life? I mean, your life would have been completely different. You know, unreal. Yeah. What time were you supposed to pick him up? What time were you assigned to arrive at the house?
10:45.
Okay. And Kato, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, 10:45. So we're usually there a little bit early, and I think I arrived at about 10:20.
Oh,
And Kato, you take it from there. Where were you at 10:20? And did you see the limo pull up into the yard?
well, that's the thing is that I didn't see the limo at all. I was I think Allan was probably ringing the phone, and I'm not connected to his house, but I could hear a phone ringing. I don't know if it's the gate. I don't have the gate. My car's parked out in front. I come in a different way. And so if I'm not wrong, Allan, I think you probably kept calling or doing the intercom, however that worked, but it went on and on and on. I go, what is that? What is that this noise that's going on as a ringing? So I think that was you. Am I right, Allan?
Yeah, yeah, it was me because I rang it several times. I mean, there was, uh, and I would keep getting in the car because I figured that he wasn't home. There was no lights on in the house.
Right.
There was no
And,
movement around the property.
right. And then at
There
some
was,
point from you doing that ringing, I think I just went outside and I figured, okay, there's someone must be at the gate. And that's when I think I let you in. Am I right? This is going back 30 years,
yeah,
but I think I let you
well, yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah. Well, I thought you came out because of the what you heard on the wall
Oh yeah,
and the
no,
thumps.
I
To,
mentioned when I saw you, I said, "Hey, did we have an earthquake?" And I think I didn't even
correct.
know you. I said because my picture moved in the room where I'm at, and then we had our that little conversation, and I let you in. And if I remember, you pulled in, and I think the luggage might have been out front, some of it, like golf clubs
That's
on
correct. Yeah, I mean, after I saw the figure go across the driveway, I was still on the phone with Dale. And I said, yeah, I think I see somebody. Somebody's here. You could tell that they went into the house. The lights came on. Um, that's when I got out, rang the intercom again, and he finally picked up. And you could tell he sounded out of breath. He said that he just got out of the shower. He said he overslept, got out of the shower. He'd be down in a minute. And I expected him to buzz me in or open the gate at that point, which he didn't. And that's when you were over there by the side of the driveway, coming from that pathway from behind the house,
right,
saw me at the gate and came and opened the gate for me, let
right.
me in. And you're correct. I drove up to basically the front door there. The front door was wide open, and there was two bags that were sitting right there on that little wooden bench that
Mm-hmm.
he had on the front there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when I got out of the car and you instantly came out and said, "Hey, did you feel an earthquake?" And I said, "No, I didn't feel anything." And you had that little teeny flashlight in your hand, little pin light,
Yeah.
and you walked over to the side of the garage. And I remember you trying to call the dog over there with you. He had a chow or something.
Yeah. I don't remember the
Uh,
chow's name, but
I still
it's
remember. I
it's so.
think it's so weird. I have a crazy memory, but I think was the dog's name Chachi,
Okay, well, I think it was Chachi. I think the dog was Chachi. We go back there,
and
but I got to tell you, it's so. I think I've got an impeccable memory myself. I mean, there's certain things that I don't. From my view, I remember stuff that involved me, and then you remember stuff that was going on with you. And like I said, the stuff that I remember is you letting you in and then asking about the earthquake. And the other stuff, I don't remember the door being open like you do. But I think that you're probably as the driver, you're making sure that you're there on time. And I'm sure that you're thinking to yourself, God, I hope I have a great conversation with this guy. I love football. And I mean, there's so much going on in your mind that you're making
yeah,
sure you're
yeah.
doing everything correct.
Well, especially the time. The time was huge for me because I'm always looking at my watch. I was always looking at what time it was, what time I made phone calls. Um, what? So it's on such a timeline, and then
Yeah.
obviously my other job is to handle bags, so I
Yeah.
paid attention to all the
Tom,
baggage that was there.
Tom and myself and other shows, we always, we talk about the timeline from Tom Lang to Jill Shively to Skip Junis, and yours is just your pinpoint on everything that you have with the timeline. And that's what I
Yeah.
think is why you became so important of your timeline to Marsha Clark.
Well, that was huge. I mean, when I the first meeting with her, when I went over the phone calls and I was giving her times on the phone calls, she was writing them down. And she even said, she said, "Don't worry too much about the time on the phone calls because we're going to subpoena the phone records anyways." But when I went through the time, the phone, the records on, the time on the phone, the second time that I met with her, she goes, "You're amazing." She goes, "You were 30 seconds or less off of those phone calls."
Mm-hmm.
She goes, "It's unbelievable."
So she's salivating for you as a witness at that point. And remember, that's why Allan's testimony was so important, because not only his memory, but he was making multiple phone calls to his boss, to the house. All that stuff was documented, so everybody knew that info. Allan, you were pretty close to just bailing, right? I mean, didn't your boss say, "Hey, if he doesn't show up in the next couple of minutes, leave," because his flight was 11:45 or so?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, at the same time, same thing is we don't have cell phones. I only had a phone in the car, so every time I got out, I paid. Time of pagers, I paged him, and I didn't get a call back. And then my mom happened to be at my house in Torrance, and so I called her to get his home phone number that I had written down, because I didn't have his home phone number as in Dale's. And so I called her, called his home phone, left a voicemail, and then he called back. So there were several phone calls made in between this time.
Yeah.
So that being on record. And but by the time he was going to call me back, or, I still hadn't heard from him. Yes, I was at the point where I was like, hey, it just doesn't look like anybody's here. And there were other times I was supposed to pick him up, and it didn't go through. One, he called and canceled at the last minute. Another time I went to go pick up him and Marcus Allen at the airport, and they didn't show up. They either got on another flight or whatnot, but They weren't there. So, this time I was like, well, I guess it just wasn't meant to be to drive this guy, because he's not here again. And then that's when Dale called, and he said, "Hey, sometimes he could be running a little bit late. Just hang on a little bit, just a few minutes more."
Yeah.
And as we talked, that's when I saw the figure go across the yard.
Yeah, and just everybody watching this, keep in mind, this is like less than an hour from the murders. All this is happening. And the other key thing that was going on at this point is what was in that duffel bag. Both of you guys saw that duffel bag in different circumstances. Kato, why don't you take it from here?
And the where the Bronco was parked.
Yeah, exactly. Because
that the two times that I drove by there, when I drove up, there was no Bronco there. When I came back off the Ashford Street, I was going to go into that Rockingham gate, and there was no Bronco there again. So two times I know for sure on that Rockingham side there's no Bronco. But when I left through that Rockingham gate, and I know something was blocking my view, but I knew I had to look around something. There was some traffic coming down the Rockingham Street, and I didn't know if it was a Bronco or not. I mean, today I look back on it and I guarantee you that's probably what it was. But I couldn't tell. But Marshall wanted me so bad to say, hey, that was the Bronco when I left. But I couldn't, just being truthful and saying that I know something was there, but couldn't say for sure.
Well, which kind of makes sense now that I'm thinking. Once again, I'm going back in my head and playing detective. But if Allan doesn't see the Bronco there, that would only make sense that he hops the fence, that he hops it in back of my room, where Tom Langware said maybe he banged his head or something on the air conditioning unit. There's no windows on my room. It's just a wall where the picture moved, where I thought the earthquake, and that's where they found the bloody glove. And it just, hearing this, everything kind of just adds up to make sense. So Allan, I let you in, and we both see, which is so important, and it drives me crazy. It drives me crazy probably daily if I think about it, that duffel bag, or how I explained it was dark and I was going to go. I think you and I packed the car, and I maybe put clubs in the car, but I was going to walk over there. And the way he said, no, I got it. And you heard that.
Oh, yeah. No. I was going to say, do you remember how protective he was of that bag? You said, oh, let me go get that bag. And he, really jumped out. No. That's right. I'll get that bag. That's okay.
I was already half the way there, kind of like doing a little jog. I'll get this one. Is this,
Yeah,
and then it was
exactly.
like, no, I got it. So.
And I remember that stood out to me, because I was like, that was bizarre. It was just weird behavior for that. And especially for, my boss had said, usually when you go and pick him up, he never handled his own bags. Like, he's the star, he gets in the car, you handle his bags. And he was really not wanting me to touch a lot of stuff that night, even when I got to the airport.
Yeah, so he did pick up that bag. Like, I didn't see it, so he did obviously get that bag and brought it in the car.
Yes. Yes, he went and got it himself. He put it inside the car, and that's the one that never came back, and that's the one that was on the trash can at LAX the last time I saw it.
And so what's important is that I don't know, obviously I don't know Allan's testimony back then. I don't know about Skip Junis seeing the bag. So all this stuff kind of adds up now that we do our show.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
kind of know that all this stuff was how the prosecution builds their case of letting one witness talk and then I'm another witness, but they all go, everybody saw this bag.
Allan, what was his you can continue your thought here, but let me ask you this.
Oh, I was just saying that bag just didn't come back. You know?
Yep. And we talked about the bag in a previous episode. Go back and watch that with Skip Junis. It's great. And we're going to get to that in a second. But he finally gets in the car after all this. A lot of odd things have already occurred, for you. In a typical run, there's some oddities and inconsistencies with this thing. So you think, okay, is this going to get more crazy? He gets in the car. It's your first time driving O.J. Simpson now, and there's some urgency to get to the airport because he has his flight to catch. So what was it like conversing with him? What was his demeanor like?
The window was down. The divider was down in between us. He repeated how hot he was and that he was sweating. So I actually told him where the AC controls were, and he already had the window down. And I guess I kind of thought it was a little odd because, it's 11 o'clock at night, June, it wasn't that warm.
June gloom.
I'm wearing a suit.
Right, it's June gloom.
That wasn't hot.
It was that June gloom feeling. It had that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it was still kind of a cool night. So he was very hot. And I could hear him. He was rummaging through some of the bags, and I can hear him saying, "I forgot something, man. I know I forgot something." And that was about he asked me which way I was going to take to the airport. He suggested, "Hey, why don't you just jump off here at Sepulveda or something like that?" I think I remember. The traffic was pretty light, and we were trying to get there in a decent hurry. So I was driving pretty quickly. I wasn't doing the speed limit. I know that.
And so when you get to the airport and you're parked in front of American Airlines, and we had a gentleman named Skip Junis on our show. Skip saw him take that duffel bag out and open it partially just so his hand could fit in there and throw stuff out. Did you see Skip Junis at all?
No, because we got out and again it was kind of rush. So I started to help him with the bags out of the trunk, and he shooed me away again. He was like, "Hey, why don't you go get a sky cap?" And I said, "Okay." So I went to go look around to see if I could get somebody. I couldn't. I found a cart. I brought the cart back, and he was loading things on the cart, and still really kind of was not. He was grabbing everything. He went over to the curbside, check-in right there. And I was looking through the limo to make sure, and I saw that when I went to look at him, that bag was sitting on top of a trash can.
Oh,
that is where I saw it, and that was the last place I saw it.
And that was what Skip had said, that it was on the on the trash can. So, and maybe when he told you to go look for a sky cab and get a cart, that's probably you're out of view. You can't see him doing what he's going to do.
Yeah, I didn't, and there's other people around. I want to say there was even an American Airlines employee that asked him for an autograph.
Might have been Skip's wife.
Who it was. And
yeah. I guess, Tom, another question kind of asked you, Allan, you had, like you said, you had Faye Dunaway, you've had other celebrities, Gene Wilder and all that. Did OJ tip?
He just said add 20% to the bill. So he, in a sense, he did. But remember, I don't think he had any cash that night.
Right.
Weren't you buying him food and stuff?
All right.
Yeah, that's right. Well, he had a $100 bill that he went to McDonald's with that he tried to get Kato to become a cashier for. Okay, so he gives you the 20% tip. Did you take one last look as he runs through the airport? Was he running through there to try to get to the gate?
Oh, yeah. It looked just like a Hertz commercial. So when I got back in the car, and as I was about to ready to pull away, I looked towards the airport there, and he was running down the causeway there to get to his flight.
Yeah.
So what's that timeline now? Because you said Tom, the flight was at 11:43, correct? So what you're at the airport at what time?
And probably 11. It's been now that's 20, we said 11, yeah, so about 11:20.
Wow.
Yeah, but back then that was possible. Pre-TSA, you could zip through even
Yeah,
LAX
you're
late
exactly,
at night. Yeah,
exactly.
you could do it.
Hey, today's show is sponsored by our good friends at Aura.
I'm going to ask you guys to do something. Do a Google search of your name. Wait till you see what comes up. I've done it. Kato's done it. It's incredible what is out there. It really makes you feel uncomfortable to think what is out there and what is being sold on the dark web. I mean, this is real. This is a reality of the world we live in right now. Data brokers will sell your information to scammers, to spammers, and anyone else that may want to target you. Your full name, your health records, your home address, information about your relatives, it's all out there. And that's why I've been using Aura, and so has Kato. It's showing us what data brokers are finding and what they're selling out there. So cleaning up information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use that information to help them access my social media accounts, my bank accounts, any other sensitive information that's out there about you. We've got a special offer for you too. Go to aura.com/1degree. Aura.com/1degree. Sign up for a free 2-week trial and let them go to work for you right now. And I don't know if you heard the story about the big data breach with AT&T. Something like 73 million people were compromised.
Tom, I just got the letter in the mail yesterday, and the U.S. postage mail came to my door, and it's exactly saying that I was breached. Now, this just when I had AT&T, so I no longer have it, thank goodness. But yes, I was one of the people that was breached, and thank goodness for Aura.
Yep, and it does give you peace of mind. So if you want to make sure that your information is safe, let Aura do all the work for you and take advantage of our special offer, aura.com/1degree. Sign up for the free 2-week trial, and we also have the link in our description. Okay, so that ends, a pretty eventful night for you. Little did you know what was in store for you for the next 30 years. You go home, you live in Torrance. Eventually, you got to hear that the murders happened. How did you find out?
Well, first of all, like I said, when I went home that night, I obviously thought it was something was off. You're not thinking the worst like that, but I thought something was weird. It just didn't feel right. It just felt like an odd night. And went to sleep, wake up the next morning. Like I said, my mom happened to be staying at the house. And I wake up to her screaming, here I am thinking the house is on fire or something. She's saying, oh my God. And I go running in there, and she said that they found, Nicole Brown and another person killed last night. And either way, she knew, because she's like, you drove him last night, didn't you? And I said, yeah. And she said, oh, hang on. She said, this is going to be a ride.
And Kato,
she knew kind of right away.
Yeah, and Kato, Allan's mom, you talk about someone that has instincts to know what was in store. Your mom, Allan, was a public defender in LA County, so she's in that court system.
Public defender and a criminal lawyer. She was a defense attorney.
And she knew that you drove OJ to the airport. She could see the future. She knew this was going to be a circus. You probably just had to watch it unfold. So how quickly from the time that your mom alerts you to the fact that those murders occurred to when there's some activity around your house, or maybe your phone's ringing or something's happening?
Everything, because news and things started to change. Obviously, I think one of the big things was the time of deaths. And first, they were saying after midnight, I want to say from the very beginning or something. So at that point, it went from me being an alibi to now the time of death started getting earlier and earlier, and started getting around the 10 o'clock, 10, 15 time, somewhere around that area, to now me not being an alibi and being more of probably a witness, not sure of what was going on. The funny thing being, that was on Sunday. On Tuesday afternoon, I get a phone call from a Leroy Taft, which is Skip Taft, and Bob Shapiro. They're the very first people to get a hold of me. Not
before the prosecution.
LAPD, right? Not the DA's office or anything like that. It was the defense attorneys, and which they wanted to know if they could ask some questions, which was fine.
Yeah.
I know I was talking to them on speakerphone, which later came out that they did record my phone conversation without my consent. But it was fresh in my mind, and my testimony was, or my, when I recounted the night, was consistent with, everything from the beginning.
So basically,
So they thanked me. Yeah.
Oh, it's basically, so they're asking you on what you're telling us. They asked those same questions to you, as that was their first interview. Your first interview with anybody was with those two, and
Correct.
So you told them exactly what.
Basically, yeah. I mean, word for word, went through the exact timeline that
Yep.
I gave Marsha Clark. So at that point, so that was on Tuesday, Wednesday. I want to say Wednesday morning or Tuesday night is when the LAPD, when the DA's office got a hold of me. The DA investigators got a hold of me, wanted to do an interview with me, which was where they wanted me to come down to LA. They said they had to do it in the station, and I said, "No, I'm not going to drive down there. You guys are going to come to me. I'm not going anywhere." And they said they had to do it in a station. So I realized that I think LA Harbor, Wilmington, or something had a station there by
Right.
San Pedro. I went over there,
And your mom.
and that was with I think that was with Paul Tippin and Carr. Was the so they interviewed me for about 3 hours. And I mean, this was wild to me. I mean, I was pretty young, and at the very end of the interview, I suggest to them, I said, "Hey, you guys might want to go check the limo. We haven't driven it since that night." And they were like, "Oh, hey, that's a great idea." I'm like, really? This is amazing to me that they wouldn't go check the limo. I mean, there could have been fibers, blood. I mean, something hidden under the seat. I don't know.
That is amazing. Yeah.
I'd never heard that.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That they never even, I mean, you would think they would impounded that limo right away.
Yeah. So what happened? Did they, obviously they checked for fibers and
this is when I realized how crazy this trial and how things were going to be was. So I tell them, you might want to go check the limo. They say, great idea. We end the interview. Meantime, during that interview, Channel 9 News goes up to my boss's house and says, "Hey, we heard that Town and Country, you're the limousine company that drove OJ on the night of the murders." And Dale denies it, says, "No, sorry, you must have got the wrong company. Wasn't me." They apologized, said, "Sorry about that. We thought it was you." He goes back, gets in the car. Well, up comes the LAPD to look at the limo, and Channel 9 sees that. I go to a buddy's house from the interview, and I stay there till about 10:30 at night. And like I said, no cell phones, no nothing. So I don't know. So I come home at about 10:30. I turn the corner, and there's about 50 news vans up and down the street.
Yeah.
And I figure by that time they know that where I live. And so I park on the street behind our house, jump the walls, and go into the house. And my dad says, "Well, they found out where Dale is." And I looked out the front yard, and it was just, I mean, his house was lit up like a stadium. And I was on a boat the next morning on my way to Catalina.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's interesting because you could feel the walls coming in on you, no question, right? It's a matter of time before they find me. Now, you had this opportunity to go to Catalina because your family operates a business there. So was that an easy decision for you? And were you leaning on your mom during this time too?
Yeah,
was she acting as your pseudo lawyer?
In a sense, I mean, throughout some of it, yeah. I mean, everybody kind of seemed to start to have lawyers and advice through counsel or whatnot. But it was easy to pick her brain, and she actually was living on the island. My aunt and uncle owned a business on the island, so I called her that morning, let her know, and she said, "Jump on the next boat. I'll put you to work." And I knew it was a great place to hide and a safe haven for me.
Right.
It was definitely going to be harder for them to get over there.
So did you yourself and your mom, you said that she was a public defender and also a criminal lawyer. Do you form an opinion kind of that next day? Did you already kind of go, it's a weird night? Did you think I think there's something to this? I'm just asking because that's a thing that pops up in my head is I thought it was a strange night myself. So did you form an opinion, and did your mom?
I mean, I want to say that it was still early, so it when little bits and pieces started to come out, yeah, we started to form an opinion. It started to not look good so for him, and then between what you testified to, or what this is before testimony, but
Mhm.
from what we witnessed that night, I started to put the pieces together and knew that it didn't look good,
Right.
and it became quite chilling,
Sure.
and knew that this was going to be something quite big.
Yeah, chilling's a good word because it's circumstances out of your control that just sucked you in, both of you guys,
Mhm.
right? Wrong place, wrong time. Literally, you're in the middle of this thing, and it changes your life forever. You went to Catalina, and that is a perfect escape. It's an hour boat ride, ferry ride from Long Beach and San Pedro. You can't just get there quickly. They can't say get downtown. We need you right away. You're gonna say, hey, there's some logistics involved here. So the week goes by. Did you watch the Bronco chase?
It was weird. I was out surfing that day on the other side of the island. I came back into town, into Avalon, and someone saw me driving by and flagged me down. And I went running into their house to see what was unfolding. I didn't know that anything was, because I didn't know that he was supposed to turn himself in. He had a time frame or anything like that. I didn't even know that was going on until I got back into town, and then that's when I ran up to see what was going on, and it was just absolutely nuts.
Yeah, that's riveting television. You can't turn away from that. So we've got a lot to cover in here because we want to get to your testimony at the trial. But another really interesting point of this story is the grand jury, which happens in July. And clearly she's going to want you to testify there. You're still in Catalina saying, come find me if you want me. I'm over here. Talk to me a little bit about what was going on, what you were doing on the island, especially around the 4th of July, because I think the grand jury was going to convene shortly after that. So how did Marcia Clark physically get you to LA for this?
Well, that was actually ended up being, that was the preliminary hearing. So I already did the grand jury, which was, Kato can testify to that that was crazy because it was just a room full of, can't even remember how many people were in there. It was just kind of pandemonium.
Yeah, I explained it like an auditorium. You're just sitting there. You're like, this is it's the grand jury. You just growing up, you hear the word grand jury. You think, well, what is a grand jury?
Well, and you kind of look around, you say, like, all these people are involved.
Right.
It was a room full. So we get through the grand jury, we go to do the preliminary hearing. The preliminary hearing for me was on a Friday, and 4th of July was on Sunday. So she was putting me on the stand on that Friday, and I'm up waiting in Marcia Clark's office, and we're taking some time to she's taken quite a while to come and get me, and I'm completely nervous. I'm feeling like I could puke at that point, and my mom's over here, saying, because she got to go in the courtroom with me, acting as my attorney, and she's like, "Isn't this exciting?" And I'm like, "No, Mom, I'm about to puke, man." And she's just like having a great time with it. Well, I think there was a witness, lady named she wasn't a witness, but she was in control of all the witnesses. Patty Jo Fairbanks, I think her name was.
Yep.
And she came back up into the room. She says, "Hey, they're taking a recess. Marcia's coming up to talk to you." So that's when she comes up to the room and she says, "Hey, did you talk to the defense?" And I was like, "No." And she says, "Are you sure?" And I said, "No." And then she goes, "Well, they say they have a tape recording of you." And because I completely forgot about the phone conversation with them on
Right.
so soon after. And then I said, "Oh, wait a sec. I did talk to somebody." And she goes, "Was it Robert Shapiro?" And I remember at the time I said, "They only introduced their name as Skip and Bob." And she said, "Well, that is Miss Taft and Shapiro." And she said, "Well, I'm not going to put you on the stand. I want to listen to the tape." So she goes and we sit in her office, my mom, Marcia, we listen to the tape, and it's consistent with all my testimony. So it didn't really help them in any way.
Right.
But a crazy ending to that tape was when they hung up and thanked me, they left the tape going. And Skip and Bob say to each other, and they say, "Huh, that's funny. That's not what OJ's telling us." And we looked at each other and our
that's
jaws just dropped. And they said, "Are you usually sweaty when you get out of the shower?" And then that's when the phone clicked down. And I just couldn't believe what we heard.
or she couldn't believe it.
And at that point, she said, "Okay, well, I want to, talk to the district attorney about the tape." She goes, "I'm not going to be able to put you on the stand until Monday." And I said, "Okay," but I said, "There's a problem with that." I said, "I'm going home. It's 4th of July on Sunday. I light the fireworks show off every year for the city of Avalon." I said, "I'm not going to miss that." And she said, "Well, that's fine. Just go ahead and go home, but I need you here Monday morning." I said, "Well, no, there is a problem because I don't have a reservation to get off that island. I guarantee I'm not going to get one." She said, "Well, just go home and let me know." And I said, "Okay, I'm just letting you know right now." And of course, I went back to Avalon. I couldn't get off. I couldn't get a boat. I couldn't get a helicopter. Call Marsha Clark back and tell her, "Hey, there's no way I can get there Monday morning." She goes, "No, you have to be here. You are on my witness list Monday morning. You will be here." And I said, "Oh, I'm just letting you know I can't get off." She said, "Hold on, I'll give you a call back." So she, a few hours later, calls me back and says, "Hey, you and your mom be down at the heliport 6 o'clock in the morning." And they actually sent over the sheriff's helicopter to come pick me up to take me to the preliminary hearing. And, here I am thinking that they're going to fly us into Santa Monica or Torrance Airport or something, drive us in. No, they had some parking lot cleared out in downtown LA. We flew through the skyscrapers and landed in this cleared out parking lot. They rushed me into the car. These guys got 3-piece suits and earpieces in, and I'm like, I'm like, man, I feel like the president getting off this thing. It was just insane.
Yeah, that's when you know you're a big deal, Allan, when they're stopping airspace for you and weaving through skyscrapers like a movie to get you because your testimony is so important. 2 things. You heard that end of that tape with Shapiro, and for the first time, you're scratching your head. You've had a couple months now knowing what happened that night. Was your mind made up at that moment that he did it? He had to have. Who else could have done it? It's obvious.
Yeah.
And the second part is, how did the testimony go on that Monday?
Well, first of all, yeah. I mean, we did have a court order to not watch anything. We weren't supposed to watch anything on the trial. That was given us by Judge Ito, but it was impossible. I mean, it was on everything. I couldn't even watch ESPN without it on there. I couldn't watch. Right. I mean, any network or any TV, it was on. Any newspaper you picked up, any magazine you picked up, it was just impossible to get away. So, peering eyes, you kind of look at some things, maybe look at a little bit of testimony or whatnot, knowing mine, knowing Kato's, Jill Shively's, and other bits and pieces. Yeah, man, I formed an opinion pretty quick and obviously thought that he was guilty from everything that I saw that night and witnessed and how things fell in line. I knew that, that obviously you don't ever think that, someone, because we have such a view or persona of what he is and the way that he's lived his life, that he's capable. So that kind of throws it off. But yeah, I thought he was guilty. And testimony that day was I mean, I was obviously nervous. You're going on TV in front of the world. You're thrown into this. And Marsha went through the testimony. I mean, everything was smooth, fine. And then once I got cross-examined by Shapiro, he really kind of, I don't know, man, he wanted to right away, I guess, trip me up or I don't know what he was trying to. I couldn't even answer like the first 5 or 6 questions because Marsha had to object to everything he was saying. And I think it was the only attempt that they had to, try to trip me up and discredit my testimony, but it didn't work for him.
So then let's establish, what happens next, because the trial starts shortly after that, and you're going to be one of the first witnesses called. What did you do? Did you stay in Catalina? Did you try to block this out as much as you could, or how much did this affect your life as you're gearing up for the trial?
Well, obviously, I tried not to let it affect my life as much as I could, but it's impossible. Everybody, it helped being on Catalina because everybody already knew me, but there was always the ones that want to, use you as a sense to, I don't know, get some notoriety or get free drinks, hey, point me out, call me out in front of, tourists and stuff on the island. So, obviously it's weird because people are asking for autographs and, wanting to hear your story, buy you a drink. I mean, so it changed, and knowing that the media was hounding you every day. Every day there was, my mom kind of, she kind of deflected a lot of the calls. I mean, it was everything imaginable. I mean, you got people from Oprah to Geraldo to, Nightly News to,
Whatever.
Larry King Live, everything, magazines, the Inquirer, offers being thrown out. And I wasn't into it, and I just kind of shied away from all that stuff. And
All right, so I'm sorry, I was going to say, are you still even drive a limo at that time? Are you done with that job?
no, I was completely done with that. It was I did a couple more events after that, and it was just too awkward. One of them happened to be an NBC press convention for all the shows coming out in the fall, and people were recognizing me, and pointing me out and stuff like that. And I felt a little weird. Another, which I can't believe Dale had me do, which was bizarre, was very shortly after that, I picked up Paula Barbieri from the airport. And she knew that it was Dale's business. And this is just a few days after. And I picked her up at the airport. This was the time when you can still go to the gate and pick her, pick up clients. I had a fictitious name for her. She wasn't under that name. And I pick her up, take her, and she starts talking about some of the incidents. And she says, "Poor Dale." And I said, "Well, I hate to say so, I was the one driving that night." And the conversation changed at that point. She's really feeling sorry for me. And she said, it was a weird conversation. So but the weird thing was, when I go and take her somewhere, I drop her off this house, and I go home that evening, and on the news, they're flying around in a helicopter trying to find out where OJ is, and they pan on that house. I'm like, that's crazy. I was just at that house today dropping her off, realizing it's Kardashian's house where OJ was. And here I am sitting in that house, probably feet away from him again, and not knowing that he was even in that room. Ended up being very chilling again to me.
So people that we are listening, the name Paula Barbieri, that was OJ's girlfriend. And that's
Correct.
why it's so important that the odds that you're driving his girlfriend after you took OJ to the airport, this is amazing that even happened, that you have her as your client and you're driving.
Correct.
This is stuff that, Tom, it's an amazing story. I've heard it for 30 years, and I'm sure, Allan, for this same, I've been hearing stories, calls, and all this stuff. I'm hearing this from you after 30 years of seeing you now, we're face to face, that this story is blowing me away. That you are driving Paula Barbieri, you're going to Kardashian's house. It's just, it's amazing that all these coincidences happen to you.
It's, when I look back on it and I start to connect all the dots, it really is. It is a crazy story. And, every time you even go to tell it, you remember more, and
right.
It just becomes even that more mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And if you even tried to make up something like this and pitch this as a story in Hollywood, they'd laugh you out of the conference room. They say, "Get the hell out of here." There's no way. There's no way. I mean, when you associate the Kardashians and you're literally talking, aren't you talking when you drop Paula Barbieri off at Robert Kardashian's house? Hell, maybe Kim and Khloe were home at the time too. Let's make this story even crazier. Maybe Allan was playing Ring Around the Rosie with them at this point. But you drop Paula Barbieri off, and this is the same week. This is what? Was this the 17th? Week, yeah. Was this the day of the chase? Was this Friday?
This, honestly, I cannot remember exactly what day that was. I want to say it was before. It was before he was supposed to turn himself in. So it's only just before. It was just before that he was supposed to give himself up to the LAPD.
There's got to be 1,000 limo drivers in LA. And the same one drives OJ to the airport and then picks up his girlfriend. But again, it speaks to the relationship that your boss, Dale, had with OJ.
Oh, yeah.
It was his go-to service. But then, man, just a reminder of what the middle of the madness that you found yourself in.
Oh, it was like I said, the press convention that I was driving at the very end of the, and there was people, it was Jay Leno and Conan O'Brien, all these people there, and they had this big party at the end, and I'm sitting over here in the corner with all these limousine drivers. I'm just sitting amongst them. None of them have any idea. And all of a sudden, some girl comes out of the crowd, and she comes up and wants to take pictures with me. So she's taking pictures, and she shakes his hand, and I'm blown away. Like, how does anybody know? And she says, I go, how did you even know I was sitting over here? And she goes, oh, Barbara Walters pointed you out. And I said, well, come on, are you kidding me? And so she walks away, and all the other limousine drivers are looking at me like, going, what was that all about?
And why is Barbara Walters at an NBC event? She's strictly ABC.
Yeah, good guy.
All right, what's going on there, Barbara?
And then, Allan, that, when the verdict was read a year later, OJ was with Barbara Walters when it was read. Right?
No, I was.
Yeah, no. Kato was with Barbara Walters as they watched the verdict being read.
Yep.
Let's go full circle.
Amazing.
Just so we get all this story, and let's get to your testimony in the actual trial and just how you were feeling. This is big. This is the whole world watching, 100 million people. It's going to be replayed a billion times that night on newscasts all over the world. What was your thought process going in, and how long did you think you'd be on the stand when this thing started?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I wanted to get off as quick as I could. And, I guess one good advice that I took from my mom that she would always tell you was, hey, if it's a yes and no question, answer yes or no. If you don't know, you don't know. Don't try to elaborate or make stuff up or go on. Just keep it, short, simple. And that's what I did.
I wish I had your mom's advice.
And so it worked well for me, and never thought in a million years that I'd be on the stand for 2 days,
Right.
How can you turn, 20 minutes into 2 days? It's just was unfathomable for me. So,
yeah.
I wasn't as nervous. Of course, I kind of had a little bit of a practice now, but, it just was so dragged out. And I remember getting so frustrated at some point because, here I am, I've been asked the same question over and over.
Right.
And how many times can you tell it? How many different ways can you ask it? So I know I was getting pretty frustrated at that point.
Yeah.
I don't think that, I want to say somewhere in some of the books that were written, the defense team had a name for me. I can't remember. I want to say I think they called me like Little Abe or something because I was so honest. I want to say, I think that kind of went around. So, here I was. I thought they wanted to get me off the stand pretty quickly because I kind of hurt their testimony with my timeline and how, accurate I was with everything. They did call me up to a sidebar, Johnny Cochran. And I remember it, obviously we know that the trial seemed to change. It kind of metamorphosed into a soap opera. And you saw how people changed in the trial, whatever it be, hairstyles and clothes. And it seemed like they were more playing up to the camera. And I think the trial got a little lost in I think Ito didn't have a whole lot of control on some of the courtroom antics. I just remember Christopher Darden and Johnny Cochran, bickering at each other and nitpicking things and Ito just not putting a stop to it. When we went up to the sidebar, they wanted me to look at some bags. And they were really talking about that little black bag that Kato offered to go get, and that he was so protective about that never returned. That bag was never found. So we went, they had a bag and they wanted me. I don't know if they were trying to get me to say, could that be the bag or whatnot? Well, the bag didn't look anything like the bag that was on the ground. It was the completely different color. It was two-tone. It was smashed like it just came out of a box. The thing was brand new, and it still had the key zip tied to it. So I kept saying, no, I that's not the bag. That cannot be the bag. It's, I don't know where they were trying to go with that. I mean, they even brought the golf. I think in the trial, they brought the golf clubs out to me, to the stand. I think they had almost all the bags, but they were, I think I even tried to shoot down the golf bag, I want to say, because the golf bag still didn't look like the one that they had. I remember the emblem being different. I mean, that's how I don't know, I guess if you want to call it weird, my memory was, and how I was able to pick things apart.
Yeah, you mentioned that you were surprised you were on the stand for 2 days. I'm shocked you weren't on there for 2 months. But the reason you weren't is because you were too good of a witness for the prosecution, and the defense knew that. They knew it. They were afraid of you. They wanted to limit their exposure to you, I think, because you just always stuck to the facts, and that timeline made sense. One thing during your testimony, Cochran kept going back on cross. He wanted to hammer that thing. Why didn't you see the cut on his finger? Why didn't you see the cut on his finger? Should you have? Could you have? How dark was it? And that was the one thing that he wanted to use out of you, the fact that you didn't identify that OJ had a cut on his finger, and he thought that might be enough. Did you think he got you at all there, or do you think that how you testified really slammed the door for the prosecution?
I wouldn't say slam the door, but I know that I was a huge part of it, and it connected the dots for sure. I mean, with the rest of, everyone else's timeline, it just fit together, with a puzzle that was perfect. But no, and I don't think that I lost any of my credibility or anything because I didn't see anything. I think I remember them asking me, did I shake his hand? And I said, yes. And they said, well, didn't you notice any cuts on his finger when you shook his hand? I said, no. When you shake a man's hand, you look him in the eyes. I'm not looking at his hand, So that was my answer, and I thought that I kind of deflected whatever he was trying to go with that.
Right. Allan, it's 30 years, and there's documentaries coming out, and I've told Tom, and I've told so many people, I said this will always go on. It's the template for any trial that goes on, and but it is amazing, and your story is. All the stories we've been doing on our show have just been so amazing, and seeing you after 30 years, and you're a stand-up guy, so I'm sure you're part of documentaries, but I just, hearing this again, I tell Tom all the time, it's going back in time, and it seems like it was just yesterday, because you hear it again, and it just kind of blows me away that it's been 30 years, but it seems like yesterday.
Yeah. It really does. I mean, it is really, really hard to, I guess, like you say, it feels like yesterday when you kind of, and especially seeing you now, and first time in 30 years, it does bring it back, and it does feel like yesterday, and it doesn't feel like 30 years. And I remember so much from that night. That it still gives me chills,
and I'm sure that you have these dreams about that, because I still in my head go out to that gate. I just see me just walking out like nothing, just like, oh, there's a guy out there. Did we have an earthquake? And I was just being me, and you're being you. But because you don't realize anything has ever happened, it's just a limo driver's here.
Well, yeah, you're talking about at the moment.
Yeah, and I just,
at the moment,
that plays in my head of that.
It's obviously, it's weird to me that, I go back on that night sometimes, and I'd always, I don't want to say second guess or question myself, but it was always like, did I really see that? Did that really happen?
Yeah.
And, it's a crazy night that'll never go away.
Well, this has been an unbelievable treat for me to be in the middle of this. This is the first time you two have ever been on a show together. Ever. Yeah. The two biggest stars in the OJ saga, jury debacle, the trial, the whole thing. I want to get into one last thing about the trial, and then I want to make sure, Allan, you get a chance to talk to OJ about that one thing that you've been waiting 30 years.
You called me OJ twice, please.
Did I really?
Tom, yes.
Okay, that's on my bad. Luckily, good editors. I'm just seeing if anybody's...
No, it's okay. It's
Kato. This is Kato.
I did play football, but I didn't break any records.
Let me get to the question, and then you can talk to Kato about the one thing that you've been wanting to discuss with him for 30 years. You were the only person that testified that the jury asked to have the testimony reread during deliberations, which is kind of a big deal, especially when you realize that you basically hammered home the timeline, for the prosecution. You would think if they wanted this, if they wanted to hear this again, it's just like hammer it home that, he did it. We're going to convict him. Now, I want to ask you this question, because outside of being the answer to a trivia question where you were the only one, this was something that really caused some concern for you, the fact that you were brought back at the very tail end of the trial yet again, right?
Correct. I got word again. I was actually out working, and I got word again through somebody seeing me on the street that the jury was coming back from deliberating and wanted to hear my testimony. So I rushed home to go and see this, and one, I was thinking why. Two, I was a little bit nervous on what they might have been looking for. And three, I thought for sure at this point, I'm thinking the man's guilty. And I know it was very divided. It became racial, and it became divided into, I believe, white and black. And I thought for sure that they're going to find him guilty, and that it's going to be my testimony that's going to put him away. So I wasn't feeling safe. I wasn't, it was very uncomfortable for me. And I think, I think they were looking at something in the testimony about how I said there was 2 cars in the driveway. And I think that became pivotal in part. If anything, that's what they tried to discredit me, because maybe there was only 1 car and I testified to 2. And I was like, well, they're going to throw my whole testimony out, how accurate and how everything was, perfectly timelined, that it was just the cars. I just thought, all right, well, they're completely mistaken on this.
Yeah.
But, as Kato said that, that did you say you were with Barbara Walters when you watched the verdict?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah. So they were trying to get me to, they wanted to film me and be on TV. I can't remember I had several offers to go and watch the verdict with being televised. And because of them reading my testimony back, I didn't want anyone to know where I was at. I didn't feel safe.
Yeah, my thing was with Barbara Walters, though. That wasn't televised. I was with her in a hotel for something separate. That came out. It was just her and I whispering to each other when it came up.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
good thing it wasn't televised. So and I mean, I was the only testimony read back out of all of that.
Well, if you want to see Allan again, if you're traveling by Amtrak, you may see him. He's an engineer, a conductor on Amtrak. So Congratulations on the rest of your career, Allan. Can't tell you enough how much we appreciate having you here today. And for us to be able to put this together with you two in the room for the first time ever, I know our viewers just know what a treat this is. So make sure, let's fill this up with comments and let me know who you want next as guests, because we're going to try to get everybody. I'm out there every single day trying to get the biggest names from this trial. The 2 biggest are here today, and Kato's always with me.
Was that the question?
Yeah.
No. I'll get to it.
Yeah, hey, I got a question.
Yeah, go for it. No. So I wanted to say that. Thank you, but Allan,
thank you.
I know you've been itching for 30 years to ask Kato something, because let's hear it.
It better not be a hair product question, Allan. It better not be about if I use Redkin. Go ahead. What's the question?
The question is, do you remember this? And it's always drove me crazy, because they didn't really kind of, bring it up in the trial or whatnot, but it was one of the biggest parts of the night that bugged me. And it was when obviously Kato heard us talking about, OJ heard us talking about earthquakes and someone on the property and the noises and all that. And I know that you voiced your concern to him. And at that very point, when he asked, or when he stated, all right, we'll go check the property. And he said to you, you go around that way and I'll go around this way. And he showed you to go around the garage, and he was going to go around the other side of the house, the point, around the other side. And you guys agreed, and you started to walk around the garage, and he followed you. And I thought it was so bizarre, because I was like, I clearly just heard him say he was going to go the other way.
Yeah.
And since he followed you, he started to follow you. And I was like, oh, well, if there's something out there, I'm going to go with him. I'll go check with him. And I closed up the limo, and I started to follow behind OJ, and he turns around, he sees me following him. And then that's when he says, oh, we got to go. We got to get out of here. We're running late, which we kind of were. Do you remember that?
I don't. I do remember all 3 of us together. And you brought up a thing about a pen light. I don't remember that, but I'm sure I did. I know that I was freaked out with the noise, and I got more freaked out later that night of just thinking how strange of a night it was. But there's something about checking what's that noise was, and in hindsight now you look like, if he has a flight to catch, why does he even care or anything? So that doesn't make sense to me. And my concern with the earthquake was more to you. He heard us and he asked about it, and it was. Let's once again, it's just 30 years back. But it was like almost a case of bad acting by him.
Oh yeah. Yeah, clearly that just makes sense to me. That statement makes sense to me. Because the way that he even asked about we had an earthquake, and I was like, no, we didn't have an earthquake. The way that he even said that was, was a bizarre statement. But I still clearly remember him saying that, you go that way, I'll go this way.
And I'm sure you're right. I'm sure you're right.
And I was blown away. I'm like, wow, that's just so weird, man. He just said he was going to go the other way. Why isn't he?
And real quick, was that before or after I was going to get... That was the very end of the night.
So
I already said I'll get that bag.
Yes.
It happened after that.
So everything was in the car. We were kind of wrapping up and he was literally getting in the car to go, and then he said that, and that was at the end. And then you went and opened up the front gate for us, and we drove off.
This is just chills right there. I got my hair standing up. But yeah, Allan, it's amazing story. You were an amazing guest. Thank you.
Yep. Allan, thank you so much. You guys, I know everybody just enjoyed this historic hour podcast. Never happened before. Allan, anything we missed, just real quickly, because we do got to run, but I think we covered pretty well.
No. We don't have time.
Yeah. Episode 2, we'll come back, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's just so much to talk about through that whole thing.
Okay. Well, let's just consider that we'll continue this conversation at a later date, if that's okay with you guys. All right?
Anytime.
He's with Amtrak. Thanks for hopping on the K train.
Yeah. That's
all aboard.
Yeah.
Two freight trains going in separate directions.
Thanks, Allan.
On separate tracks through history. Really, really an epic description of that night, probably the most famous night ever.
June gloom. It was June gloom.
That fits it perfectly.
Yeah.
All right, Allan, we'll let you get back to what you have to do. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Stay on the line there before we end. And I just want to thank everybody for watching this show, for going back and watching our other content. This is one you want to share. If you know other people fascinated by the OJ saga, tell them about our show, 1 Degree of Scandalous. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Go back and watch some of our other content. Check out Kato and me all week on social media. We'll keep you updated on everything regarding this show and everything going on in our lives. But that was great, Kato.
Thank you so much.
So glad we could do it. Hope everybody enjoyed it. Let's get some comments going. I'd love to hear what you think of Allan Park today on the show. And we will catch you next week. New content every single week on 1 Degree of Scandalous. Hey, if you enjoyed that interview with Allan Park, we've got so much more on the OJ saga. Check out this interview with Skip Junis, who saw OJ Simpson dump the murder weapon, or this video right here with another witness that Marsha Clark didn't use.